Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin our show tonight in the Middle East with news from the war between Israel and Hamas, a look at some Canadian officials visiting the region, and a story from the Yukon about people coming together to help civilians in Gaza. The latest developments from the war have seen fighting move to the doorstep of the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza, and a group of at-risk babies from the Al-Shifa hospital are now safely in Egypt. Sasha Petrosik has the latest.
28 premature babies were lifted out of Gaza today, out of danger, into Egypt, suffering from infections after a week-long siege of Al-Shifa hospital by Israeli forces.
They all are, again, seriously ill. They have a long road to go.
Among the babies, Lobna Al-Sykes' daughter. Enough, she says. Stop targeting innocent children. It was one bright spot in a conflict that's had too few of them. Again today, Hamas rockets were intercepted over Tel Aviv. Increased fighting with the militant group Hezbollah along the Lebanese border in the north. And Israeli strikes continued in Gaza. Here, 14 Palestinians reportedly killed in the south. Here, hospital staff say at least 12 died when Israeli tanks moved in and fired at the Indonesian hospital. Israel says it was responding to shooting from inside. Hospital staff deny any. In all, Palestinian health officials say more than 13,000 have died in Gaza.
We are witnessing a killing of civilians that is unparalleled and unprecedented in any conflict since I am Secretary General.
Death, but also suffering on both sides. The families of more than 200 kidnapped Israelis holding on to hope that negotiations to release at least some of them are going well.
I think we should be hopeful, and I think this is the only way that we can get up in the morning and start our day. Our lives just stopped October 7th.
A similar feeling in Gaza, where in the south today, those fleeing the bombs, already facing shortages of food, medical help, and housing, now face wind and rain. A stormy season without end. Sasha Petrosik, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, a group of Canadian MPs visited a kibbutz north of Tel Aviv today to express their solidarity with Israelis.
It was really moving. It really made it very personal. It made me understand what it was like to live in a safe room, wondering if you were going to be alive for the very next minute or if your loved ones were going to be killed from moment to moment for over 24 hours. It explains a lot about the Israeli perception, why the entire political class in Israel, from the left to the right, all believes they need to get rid of Hamas.
The 2 Liberal and 3 Conservative MPs are part of a larger Canadian delegation to Israel. Today, they listened to accounts from survivors of the October 7th attack by Hamas and visited a cemetery where some of the victims are buried. In Whitehorse, hundreds of people came together to raise money for Palestinians in Gaza. They held a multicultural feast, a collaboration between Muslim and Jewish communities in the Yukon. Katrin Pilkington was there.
To work with representatives of the Jewish and Muslim community for this event.
The United Church in Whitehorse was packed on Sunday. People elbow to elbow, filling their plates with biryani, matzo ball soup, and traditional desserts. There was music, laughter, conversation, and togetherness. Israr Ahmed is president of the Yukon Muslim Association. This fundraiser was his idea, but the event was a collaboration between Jewish and Christian faith leaders.
I went to them, invited them for coffee, we sat down, had a chat, and I'm extremely profoundly grateful to all of them for being on board with this idea right from the get-go.
Many Yukoners said they valued the opportunity to show their support for both communities during a polarizing time. And what did you think when you first heard about this event?
Started phoning friends and people to make sure that they knew about it, where, what time, what it was all about. Very thrilled to have these 2 communities offer this for Yukoners.
The event raised $12,500, more than double what organizers expected. Funds will go to the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies in support of humanitarian relief in Gaza. Katrin Pilkington, CBC News, Whitehorse.
There's a big setback for Agnico Eagle's Meliadine Gold Mine expansion project. The Nunavut Impact Review Board says it should not go ahead. The board's 265-page decision was released late on Friday, and as Emma Tranter tells us, community members spent days laying out their concerns with the project.
It's a resounding no from the Nunavut Impact Review Board, citing major concerns from community members and uncertainty about how the mine would affect the wildlife and the waters around it. Among other things, the mining company wanted to extend Meliadine's life by 11 years, until 2043. The board assessment of the proposal began back in April 2022 and ended with an 8-day public hearing in Rankin Inlet earlier this fall. That hearing was dominated by concerns around caribou, including how a proposed 11-turbine wind farm would affect the herd and how the animals would react if the mine expanded. NERB ultimately decided there was too much uncertainty around the project. In a statement to CBC, Agnico Eagle says it is surprised and disappointed, and that in its view, scientific studies submitted to NERB weren't fully considered. The mining company says it won't comment further until it's determined its next steps. While NERB strongly rejected the current proposal, it did say that Agnico could submit a new one in the future, if it proves it has fully assessed the risks brought up by interveners. Federal Northern Affairs Minister Dan Van Dahl now has the final say. He can accept or reject NERB's decision. Emma Tranter, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Meanwhile, another Nunavut mine got a green light from the federal government to ship more ore from its facility. The government has said yes to Baffinland's request to ship more iron ore from its Mary River mine on northern Baffin Island. The approval means the company can now ship up to 6 million tons of ore per year until December 31st, 2024. The company has been approved for similar increases in the past. This most recent proposal was recommended for approval by the Nunavut Impact Review Board earlier this year. The Yukon government is being accused of withholding information in the Jack Holland class action lawsuit. The suit alleges that a number of students were subject to holds, restraints, and seclusion for years. Lawyers representing the families behind the suit want a court order that would force the Yukon government to share documents. The lawyers want 3 key things: a list of students who attended Jack Holland over 20 years, records of students subject to hold, restraints, and seclusion during that time, and an internal review on the topic. The applications say the government refused to disclose student records. It says government lawyers claim the records can only be used within the department, but the application claims a double standard. It says the government gave those records to the lawyers it hired to conduct the internal review. The government has publicly acknowledged the review, but has never made the findings public. A hearing date for the applications has not yet been set. People in Whitehorse are still in shock after last week's house explosion, and they want answers. The house was completely destroyed in the blast. 1 man died, and more than a dozen homes nearby were damaged. Kelly Murray lives across the street from the house that blew up. He says he was shaken out of bed, and his house sustained major damage. The Yukon RCMP say it is now a criminal investigation.
I want them to find the answer. I want them to have definitives, because this is a tragic event and we all have to live through whatever this is and feel comfortable with the things we go forward with in life. And part of that is having repairs to your home or whatever the case might be. You have to feel secure. And you have to have certifications of knowing things have been done right. And that includes an investigation.
Murray says his windows, doors, ceiling, and foundation were all damaged. The explosion killed 77-year-old David Gould, who lived next door. Another man who lived in the house that exploded was critically injured. There's still no update on what caused the blast. A majority of newly elected members to the Northwest Territories legislature support the creation of addiction treatment facilities in the territory. Previous health ministers have largely ruled out reopening them. So could this assembly be different? Luke Carroll explores that question.
Calls for a residential treatment center in the NWT haven't stopped since the last one closed a decade ago. And now at least 10 recently elected MLAs say they support the idea. The strongest support came from the north, with Lisa Semler, George Narasu, Lucy Kuptana, and Denny Rogers. Support is also in the south. Jay McDonald in Thabacha says they need one. So does Kieran Testart, a Yellowknife MLA. Vince McKay in Hay River says he wants a trauma treatment facility and regional programming for addiction services. Other recently elected MLAs say they support some form of addiction treatment facilities in the regions, although there's different ideas for how they should be funded and run. But just because there's support doesn't mean they will be opening anytime soon. Sean Dean is the former director of communications for Premiers Carolyn Cochrane and Bob McLeod. He says before treatment centers can become a reality, they need to be included in the capital plan, meaning Cabinet needs to agree on it. But even if just the regular members want it and Cabinet doesn't, it could still become a reality.
But members have a lot of influence over the budget-making process. Unique to the consensus system here for sure is that members always get an opportunity to review the business plans and the budgets before they're finalized.
Dean says another way regular MLAs could make the project a reality is in the coming weeks, when the newly elected Legislative Assembly decides on its priorities. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Nunavut's health minister says discussions about whether to call a public health emergency over the territory's suicide rate are ongoing. The talks come after Kalawitsina MLA Janet Pitsulak-Brewster called on the government to declare one. She's been personally affected by the crisis. She lost her son to suicide earlier this year. Health Minister John Main says the decision is ultimately made by Nunavut's Chief Public Health Officer. He adds there's a lot of steps involved in making the request and the decision. He says the government of Nunavut is, though, developing a new suicide prevention strategy and action plan.
In terms of suicide prevention, looking at the next 5 years is finalizing that action plan. And then once it's finalized, once it's released, it'll be implementing it. And so implementing the action plan, what does that mean? That means multiple government departments. That means multiple stakeholders from outside of Nunavut government, involves multiple partners.
The last suicide prevention action plan ended in 2022. Students from schools across Yellowknife braved a bitterly cold wind and marched together this afternoon. They were marking National Addictions Awareness Week, as you saw on that sign. The Wellness Walk is an annual event, and it's been happening for over 50 years in the city. The goal is to unite youth and teach them about the risks of using street drugs.
This year we're kind of focusing more on prevention and letting, especially for our youth, let them know what's out there and the dangers of the drugs that are available out there.
Arden says the schools and youth are always keen to take part, and they come prepared, armed with drums and anti-drug slogans. Students were offered pamphlets filled with information about street drugs after the march. A Montreal gallery that sells Inuit art is facing charges for allegedly selling pieces made from whales and other marine animals, pieces a buyer tried to take into the U.S. As Matthew Lapierre tells us, some Inuit artists say strict export rules are hurting them.
Ruben Anton Kamangapik plans to carve this 1,200-pound whale skull into an ornate sculpture. But he may never be able to sell it. The whalebone he's carving is protected by an international treaty called CITES, which restricts the sale of art made from certain marine mammals. That means it's hard, sometimes even impossible, to export.
It's really difficult because being an artist, you're living pretty much on a piece-to-piece situation.
But 2 years ago, an American doctor tried to get around that when he was caught trying to cross the border with statues made of walrus tusk and sperm whale teeth, items that can't be brought into the U.S. The doctor even went as far as asking the Montreal Art Gallery where he bought the art to fake documents. He ended up paying a $50,000 fine for breaking the rules. The gallery is now facing charges of illegally selling sperm whale teeth and falsifying documents. They have yet to enter a plea.
The bone is from a bowhead whale bone.
This Mississauga warehouse is full of art made of bone, much of which they can't get rid of because there's so few customers who can legally buy it.
The American clients who love the art and who wants to have the art but not able to import it to the country.
Even though the rules are viewed by some as an inconvenience, this conservationist says the laws are there for a reason.
The only way to assure that the artisans will have something that they can carve is to protect the art walrus and prevent it from becoming extinct.
Inuit artists say loosening the restrictions won't lead to an increase in animal deaths.
We hunt animals in a very respectful way. We hunt for what we need.
Kamangapik says he's going to continue carving bone, even if it's not easy to sell. Matthew Lapierre, CBC News, Montreal.
After decades in public service, Nunavut Senator Dennis Patterson is getting ready to leave politics. He turns 75 next month, the mandatory age of retirement for Canadian senators. Jody Ningyochak takes a look back at his career.
Dennis Patterson first came to the North back in the 1970s. He was offered to work as a temp for legal aid in the NWT. Patterson then moved to Baffin Island to work as a lawyer and hired Inuit as court workers. Later in his career, he moved into politics and served for 16 years as an NWT MLA for the riding of the Frobisher Bay and Iqaluit from 1979 to 1995. Later, he became the senator for the territory.
Well, you know, I have been so privileged to have this job. First of all, serving my community in the legislature, and then my territory as a cabinet minister for 12 years. Then I've been given the job as senator. Not everyone wanted to see an Kalunak as senator for Nunavut.
One of the highlights that Patterson praised was the creation of Nunavut and the international attention it brought to the North and its people.
But, you know, I must say that I have been so gratified at the support and, dare I say, respect I have received from Nunavummiut wherever I've gone. So I'd like to say thank you for that support. It's what's kept me going. It's what's made me work hard to overcome challenges. It's given me the courage to speak up, and that is my advice to the new Nunavut senator.
Patterson says he wants to write his own story about the evolution of Nunavut and his experience. Nunavut's Member of Parliament, Lori Itlaut, was elected 2 years ago, says she learned a lot from her senator.
Glad to see that he'll have some time to reflect on the great contributions that he's made to Nunavut, and I know that he's worked hard all his adult life to advance issues for Nunavut.
Jody Ningyochak, CBC News, Iqaluit.
Let's take a closer look at some of the milestones of Dennis Patterson's long political career. He was first elected as an MLA in 1979, as Jody said, in what was then the district of Frobisher Bay. Now, at the time, it was still part of the Northwest Territories. This was well before Nunavut split into its own territory. And he kept that seat for 4 terms, from 1979 through to 1995. He held multiple cabinet portfolios, including education, justice, health, and social services. And then in his 3rd term in 1987, Patterson was chosen to lead the Northwest Territories as Premier. During his time in the Legislative Assembly, Patterson helped settle both the Inuvialuit Final Agreement and the Nunavut Final Land Claim Agreement. Patterson was appointed to the Senate in 2009 by Stephen Harper, and it's a role he's held ever since, more than 14 years. Next month, he retires.
I'm Kathleen Goldhar, host of the new podcast, Crime Story. Every week, we bring you a different crime, told by the storyteller who knows it best. All the ins and outs.
It was a story of murder, of exploitation of a schoolgirl.
You got one witness who can't be found. You got another witness who has changed his entire story.
I remember just this feeling of like complete disbelief.
Crime Story, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
You are constantly on the move, and so are we, making sense of the moments that matter together.
Looks like things are maybe winding down.
Asking what, why, when.
To the center of the biggest stories, meeting the people living them.
Thank you for letting us be here. What's your situation?
Making sense of our world.
How are we going to be part of this solution?
With you and for you.
Connectedness, groundedness.
I'm Adrienne Arsenault. This is The National.
Canadians of generations have been miseducated.
But we don't talk about that.
We are here. We have been here.
These stories are us.
Yeah, dog!
Oh, an absolute classic.
All right.
Let's go! Yeah!
This is The National.
Two unique guests are being nursed back to health at the Yukon Wildlife Preserve. Staff are hoping to get an ill bald eagle and an injured sandhill crane back up in the air. Both were found on Yukon roadsides within a day of each other. Katie Todd has that story.
Among the preserve's bison and elk, the sound of feathers. It's been years since the last avian guest stayed here, but when conservation officers found the bald eagle near Dawson City 2 weeks ago, staff knew they had to help.
Its tail feathers were damaged, and it was quite emaciated.
A day later, government staff discovered the sandhill crane, which had lacerations on its eyelid and wing. The bird should have long ago migrated south.
Actually shouldn't be here. Even though it's been a relatively warm fall and winter, it should have already made its migration south.
The preserve posted about the new arrivals on social media, and followers swiftly donated hundreds of dollars for food and treatment. The bald eagle is gratefully eating its way back to full strength. The sandhill crane is being nursed to health by the preserve's vet in a warm indoor space.
So a lot of the people that come here have never seen a bald eagle up close, so it's great to be able to have that at a location where people are able to get there and see it up close, seeing it fly, understanding what we do here for rehab on these types of animals. Sandhill crane, also kind of random to have in the wintertime, but hopefully with lots of amazing donations and stuff, we'll be able to get it back down to the south where it belongs.
When the sandhill crane recovers, it will be catching a plane ride down to the warmer Vancouver weather. When the bald eagle recovers, it will begin a new life in the wild near Whitehorse.
We don't always know what happens to it after, and we just hope that we've done something to give it a second chance.
The preserve plans to hold a public event for the eagle's release. Katie Todd, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Cricket is taking off in Yellowknife, and I am not talking about the kind that some animals like to eat. It's the kind that people like to play. The city's field house is a big reason why. Every Saturday, the facility hosts drop-in games, and that means fans can now play the game year-round. Sarah Kremlowski went to check it all out.
So I have been in Yellowknife for the last 5 months, and I recently came to know that this community has cricket. And well, I've been playing cricket for almost 20 years or so. So it's just a natural thing to come in and join these young folks. And yeah, I'm just having a fun time of my life, just enjoying my passion. I used to play for school back home in Singapore. And yeah, so when I came to know that, you know, once again, Yellowknife had cricket, I was like, okay, let's get up and go and play the sport. You know, I was quite excited. And yeah, this is my second session, but once, you know, I came to know that these guys have been playing for a long time. We got quite a lot of experienced fellas here, so yeah, it's going to be challenging, but it's fun too. It's a small community, everyone is really friendly here. It feels like, you know, like a family, a close-knit community, right? So it kind of feels like it's a family.
I asked a couple of guys and they were like, no, like this can't happen in Yellowknife. Basically I figured that, you know, maybe there's not enough large of a community which is into this sport basically. And just after a few months, everything just changed. So I consider myself very lucky to be part of it and just playing it over here.
Cricket is extremely something close to me. I'm extremely passionate about it, and I feel it's an activity that's not only beneficial for me, but those hailing from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, even Commonwealth countries, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. Got it! Oh! And wherever I go, I like to raise awareness, and I like to promote this game and find those who share a similar passion, similar interest. And I'm just going to keep at it. I'm just going to keep on continuing doing that. Right now, I've been in Yellowknife for the past 11 years. Who knows what tomorrow might bring? If I go to a different community or different city, I believe my approach is still going to be the exact same.
Looks like a good time, and those pitches look fast, man. That is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. We leave you with a look at the weather. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow.
You're not a millennial.
Yeah, well, Dr. Dre's not a doctor. I feel like such an imposter.
You need money to survive.
He had something to hide.
Try typing with your thumbs. What do you call it?
It's called a blackberry.
Huh.
We call them crackberries.
There's a serial killer on the loose.
2 attacks in a week.
Go on. Everybody's got something to hide.
We're not gonna be here forever, right? Makes me want to make some changes.
Your family can't take much more.
Think you're a better driver when you're high? Think again. No alcohol, no drugs, no victims. A message from Mad Canada.
I want my children home where they should be.
You'll go to jail if you don't sign.
There's gonna come a time you'll feel the darkness. You don't let them win.
I understand that you're struggling emotionally.
Sure you want to do this?
I mean, it's research, right? You need to stop asking me for things I can't give you. You've done it my whole life.
I was homeschooled as a child. You can only be as smart as your mom. That's it.
Gross.
Okay, cool.
I love it.
We have an incredible show lined up for you tonight.
Wow.